Watch this. I'm going to talk about Street Fighter and not show Evo Moment 37. Oh wait, I just shouted fuck. If you look at the biggest fighting game franchises, you will find games with pretty simple stories. And this isn't a bad thing. Most people come to fighting games for the fighting, for the love of competition. Street Fighter is about various characters who travel the world and fight, and sometimes there's a bad guy they gotta team up and fight. Mortal Kombat is about a deathmatch tournament with the earth on the line, and sometimes Peacemaker is there and they gotta fight him. And Tekken is about a family of very angry men. Among these titans is Guilty Gear, a fighting game born of the extreme, hardcore vibes of the late 90s.
And here's one that's the most unbelievable of all. It says, kill your friends, guilt-free.
It's a series starring characters named after rock bands, where the cast have only gotten larger in muscle mass as the years have gone on, where vampires, immortal living machines, and sky pirates live with ninjas and psychics and war veterans. It's a game where its most recent title begins each match with the insanely raw quote, "Mankind knew they cannot change society, so instead of reflecting on themselves, they blamed the beasts."
Heaven or hell.
It is also a series with deep emotional characters, themes of growth and finding oneself, and an ongoing narrative that has stayed consistent for over 2 decades. And I think the dichotomy between those two things is pretty human. Today I want to talk about 5 characters who embody the themes of Guilty Gear very well. But I'm also gonna have to talk about the overarching narrative as well. It's gonna be a whole thing, but it'll make sense by the end. With that, let's start at the start. The story of Guilty Gear begins in the 1700s during the Crusades when a German soldier becomes immortal. But it actually begins on Y2K when a sentient supercomputer attempts to enter the world and destroy humanity, resulting in humanity abandoning technology and embracing magic instead. But it actually truly starts in the 2010s with a trio of university students, a woman named Aria, a man named Frederick, and a man named Oscar. These 3 would research biotechnology, how to advance life. Frederick and Aria would become engaged, and shortly after, Aria would fall ill to an unknown illness. Frederick pleads with her to allow herself to be cryogenically frozen so she can be thawed when a cure is found. However, she only accepts if Oscar can ensure Frederick can join her in the future. And so, without telling him, Oscar forcefully injects Frederick with one of their experiments and freezes Aria. Frederick's body erupts into violent flames, and Oscar and Aria's pod escape into the night, leaving Frederick behind to burn. Many decades later, an unaged Oscar would contribute to the Gear Project, an experiment to create biological weapons out of living organisms. However, upon activation of Justice, the gear designed to command all others, the aforementioned supercomputer would possess Justice, causing her to attack humanity, destroy all of Japan, and wage war with Earth. What followed was a 100-year war known as the Crusades. Large chunks of Earth would slowly erode into a wasteland, and through it all, reports of a man would be made. This man, known as Soul Bad Guy, is believed to have saved one of the Holy Order's most powerful heroes when he was a young child, and would then fight under him decades later, seemingly unchanged in all that time. Not long after, he would leave the Order, stealing a powerful weapon, and not long after that, Justice would be defeated. The man known as Soul Bad Guy would be her destroyer. A few years pass and a mysterious tournament would be held to find fighters to defend humanity in case Justice returns, the prize being the granting of your deepest wish. Smelling the fishy nature of the tournament, Soul would battle to the very end, discovering that the entire tournament was a ruse designed to revive Justice. The two would fight yet again, this time Soul unleashing his full power, igniting into flames as he slayed Justice once more. She would look at him, realizing what he was. A gear. The first gear. Soul was Frederick, injected with the prototype of the gear genes, mixed with an ancient power known as the Flames of Corruption. The entity would lose its grasp on Justice, and her final words imply she knew Asuka and Frederick. But before she can say any more, Justice breathes her last. Soul vows revenge on Asuka, the man who destroyed his life, as well as the gears he made who nearly destroyed Earth. Soul Bad Guy is a man who runs on revenge. He refuses to connect with anybody, seeing people as frankly pointless en route to his vengeance, though cracks in his armor begin to show. His rivalry with Kai hides a deeper connection, their wartime bond, perhaps even a begrudging friendship. And when given the opportunity to kill Dizzy, the daughter of Justice, he chooses not to, instead letting her live. It's only when he is asked to take Sin, son of Dizzy, into his care that the flame of corruption cools slightly. The kid is a brat and a nuisance, but Soul cares for him, acting as a father figure when his father simply couldn't.
シンはソルとの野営生活が長かった。だが、ソルもああ見えてしっかりと親の役割を果たしていたんだな。確かにこれは子供には苦いかもしれない。
じゃあ、シンは他の飲み物がいい？ミルクならありますよ。
じゃあ、砂糖水。
砂糖水？
ああ、うまいんだぜ。親父と旅をしていた時には
普通の水が一番だ
とか言ってなかなか飲ませてくれなかったけどな。でもなんかいいことがあった時はご褒美で飲めたんだよ。で、これは裏技なんだけど、ちょっとだけ塩を入れるとさらにマジゴッとうまくなるんだ。
それね。
With the massive sword and abrasive attitude, it is hard not to see Soul in another character, Guts from legendary manga Berserk. Much like Soul, Guts is a deeply traumatized soul who wanders the world in seek of revenge. And much like Guts, Soul slowly finds a new life, a new family. Soul may not let these people in all the way, but as the games progress, we see him open more.
What? Bunch of touchy-feely bullshit?
What?
What the hell are you standing there for? We gotta go get her back! I'm not losing anybody else.
By exert, he has a close bond to many figures, but soon comes to find himself getting to know a new person. Jacko Valentine, a woman who looks almost exactly like his lost love. He learns that she is indeed one half of Arya, the half that loved Frederick, while the other half resided elsewhere. Asuka had infused Arya with gear cells, turning her into Justice. Soul is deeply distraught by this, for obvious reasons, learning that he was the one who had taken the life of his love all those years ago. They could fuse Jacko with the body of Justice, returning Arya's full consciousness. However, in the midst of this operation, Arya's mind resists, denying her humanity. With military forces arriving to prevent Justice's possible awakening, Soul doesn't have much more time to charge his strength to weaken Justice, and I believe in order to make sense of the next few moments, we should now move on to our next subject. In the year 1998, a man would disappear. He would find himself in the year 2178 in a world vastly different from what he once knew. This man's name is Axel Lowe. For reasons well beyond his understanding, Axel has become a sort of cosmic anomaly, being able to control time. Though for most of the games, he can only warp through time unknowingly. He seeks to return to his original time, to return to his beloved Megami, though the longer he stays in the future, the farther that goalpost seems to move. Axel struggles to acclimate to the 22nd century, but he soon finds his groove, making friends in this strange new time. However, despite that, the goal of his life is still to return home to his love. In his travels, he meets a fellow time traveler, Ino, a woman who dresses like a witch, causes chaos freely, and works under Asuka. The next time he sees her, he learns the truth of his predicament. If he were to return to 1998, it would likely be that the present day of Guilty Gear's world would cease to exist. Everyone he has known, the families, the friends, the lovers, the enemies, over 100 years of stories and of lives, snuffed out in an instant on his choice alone. If one figure of this world's present were to disappear as if he was never there, the events of this reality would be no more. Axel can't bring himself to leave. Even if he gets to see his love again, he'd never forgive himself for leaving the future to rot. After a long time of thinking, he makes his decision. He stays in the future, now being able to properly control his powers, which brings us to...
これは旦那旦那聞こえるかいまさかアクセルかへへすごいっしょこの一体の時間を圧縮しちゃいました
Just as all hell is about to break loose, Axel arrives, stopping time just long enough for Soul to unleash the full power of the Flame of Corruption, weakening justice and allowing Arya to return. Despite knowing he will probably never see his girlfriend again, Axel happily assists a friend in saving his love, knowing deep down that it's what Megami would want him to do.
俺の彼女はめぐみは笑顔が可愛いんだ俺がこの世界を見捨てたとしても辛い決断だったねってきっと笑ってくれるそういう子なんだでもよダメなんだよダメなんだよそんな俺がそんな濁った俺の目じゃあいつの笑顔をまともに見れやしないんだだからさぶつかわせなんだよ上等なアクセルをいっぱい怒らせろ
Axel is someone who is almost fully selfless in spite of it all. He loves the people he's met in this time so much that he makes a choice that is truly noble. Despite having the power to revert back to the past, to continue living with his love, he knows that he can build a life in this time, that this is what the world had in store for him. And while he doesn't fully accept it yet, he is more than willing to try. Arya is not fully back, her consciousness now living dormant in Jacko's mind. For the time being, Jacko stays by Soul's side, waiting for the day Arya returns. Soul, meanwhile, grapples with the revelations of the past days. Firstly, Justice, being his fiancée, makes it so that Dizzy is, in a way, his daughter, making Kai, his years-long rival, his son-in-law, and Sin, his grandson.
いいか今から皆何も考えるな
なんで
それが平和だからだ決戦の前だもやっとしたくない俺は間違ってない
待ってくれそうかその話はディズィはジャスティスの娘でつまりいや嘘だまさかそれが私の弟
カイ
But he doesn't have much time to think about that, as he plans to finally enact his revenge on Asuka.
対決の日時は
具体的には決まってねえが野郎から連絡が来る
準備を整えるためだろうか
いや 何でも身辺整理を終わらせたいらしい。
身辺整理？
番組を中断して緊急速報をお伝えいたします。本日未明、ギアメーカーの身柄が確保され護送中との情報が入りました。繰り返します。人類史上最悪の滞在人、ギアメーカーの身柄が確保されました。
Knowing his chance to kill Asuka is narrowing, Soul prepares, as we lead into the most recent title, Guilty Gear Strive. Released in 2021, Strive is the most recent title in the franchise, and acts as the final act for the main story arc of Guilty Gear as a whole, a story told since 1998. Due to this, as characters return, we see their stories conclude, while also seeing new characters emerge to continue the story from there. Take, for example, the one that summoned Justice in the false tournament all those years ago, Testament. Orphaned during the Crusades, Testament would be found and taken in by the legendary hero Cliff Anderson. By the time they reached recruitment age, Cliff begged them not to join the Crusades, not wanting to lose his child. Without his knowledge, Testament would join and would wind up killed in action. The US would take the body and transform them into a gear in hopes that they could create a gear that could resist Justice's command. They failed. Testament would find themselves facing Cliff on the battlefield, their father being forced to attempt to slay them, seemingly succeeding, though Testament secretly survived. After the end of the Crusades, despite Justice being sealed away, Testament still remained under her control, seeking to revive their leader. It took Soul finally defeating Justice once and for all to properly awaken Testament from their trance, realizing their evil deeds. Not long after, they would find themselves in the village where Cliff was buried, having died during the tournament. It's at this time they met Dizzy, the young daughter of Justice. After the townspeople attempt to kill the new gear, Testament swears to protect Dizzy from all of humanity. Testament is certain of the evils of mankind, and it's hard not to agree with them, though they relent when they see the kindness of some humans, particularly with Kai Kisk and Johnny, captain of the Jellyfish Pirates, who takes Dizzy into his crew to allow her to grow beyond her fear of the world and her own strength. Testament refuses to leave the force they live in, still certain of the danger of the world, though there is more to their isolation. In truth, Testament fears their power much like Dizzy. They had spent so many years under the control of a monster, having taken innocent lives in pursuit of sinful deeds. They find themselves unable to move forward, unable to atone for their unconscious actions. However, much like Soul, there are cracks in Testament's hardened heart. They deeply care for Dizzy, and while wary at first, they begin to trust Kai, the man who would soon take Dizzy's hand in a secret marriage. They even bond with Johnny, forming a close friendship with the Sky Pirate, even visiting him on his ship. The last time we see Testament in-game was in 2008. However, they would finally return in Strive, and when we see them there, Testament lives with the old couple that briefly watched over Dizzy, and even had a career in construction. They're even considering moonlighting as a model. Not to mention their many hobbies, which include fashion magazines, DIY, collecting makeup, plastic modeling, especially giant robots, sightseeing, fishing, pottery, river trekking, road biking, appreciating opera, weight training, fortune telling, bonsai, gardening, watching wrestling, baking, mahjong, painting, not well, embroidery, mountain climbing, nail art, golfing, stargazing, touring hot springs, board games, writing sci-fi novels, barbecue, belly dance, beach volleyball, watching baseball, making dollhouses, liquor, they're a non-drinker, snowboarding, watching Shark B movies, collecting occult trinkets, and scrapbooks. Testament lives a peaceful, happy life, due in no small part to their relationships. Spending time with Johnny, the Jellyfish Pirates, Dizzy, and her family, they have finally moved forward in life, accepting that while the past cannot be changed, the future remains.
To go straight down your own path, no matter what others say, is a beautiful way of life.
That is undoubtedly the point of Strive, the search for meaning en route to your future. Each character we see is in the midst of, or recently just accepted, a change in their life, or otherwise simply wish to understand themselves more. Delilah, the younger sister of the psychic known as Bedman, forms a close bond with the samurai Baiken, the pair learning to move beyond their past and find solace in each other.
Big sis.
We're going.
Huh?
We're going. Together. And we'll stay together night and day. We'll eat and we'll laugh together. And our revenge? Let's give it up. Together.
The homunculus Abba and her key-shaped demon axe, Paracelsus, learn to understand themselves more, Abba attempting to soften her obsession over him, and Paracelsus accepting her as his partner.
No more confinement. No more manipulation. We'll meet each other halfway. What do you say to that?
I don't think I can change my ways, Paracelsus. I don't.
I don't know any other way either. I mean, I'm an axe. But we can at least give it a try.
Yes, the key-shaped demon axe is like her husband? Kind of. Look, we don't have time to get into it right now. And to help push that further, Strive does something truly interesting. All the characters have had individual themes over the years, that's just how most fighting games go, but Strive takes on an interesting choice by giving each fighter's themes lyrics. These lyrics, written by the series director, serve to further explore the characters' themes through their themes. Get it? Because it's the same word, but with a different meaning. That's a what's it called? Homonym. Alien homonym. If you want the best example of this, look no further than Bridget.
Yippee!
Only I'm not there, just watching from afar. I can go.
In a small English village, a rumor is held. If a family bore twin brothers, the younger shall spell bad luck for the town. Bridget was born the younger twin. Not wanting to abandon or worse, kill their newborn, Bridget's parents would raise her as their daughter. She was more or less fine with this aspect of her person, though she knew that her parents felt immense guilt over the facade. Resolved to prove the legend wrong, Bridget heads out into the world, working as a bounty hunter to bring good fortune to her town, to prove them all wrong. Over time, she would find success and even make friends with Dizzy, Kai, and the Jellyfish Pirates. Her character was more or less a gag in her only two appearances, Guilty Gear XX and XX Core, but that was more or less it for her. And then, at EVO 2022, the first fighter for Strive's second season was revealed. Fans were excited, a fan-favorite character returning after so long. And following the theme of Strive, Bridget's character arc, minor as it was, arrived at a conclusion of sorts. We learned that Bridget had found the fortune she had been looking for, had proven her town wrong, and was accepted as the boy she was born as. And yet, she lacks the happiness she thought she'd feel. It's only upon talking with US Secretary of Defense Gold Lewis, not a joke, that she begins to ponder her feelings, that there is a truth she has yet to come to terms with. And her theme, The Town Inside Me, exemplifies this to a T. Don't believe me? Well, this next section is a full-on essay I wrote about it that I made like a couple years ago that I have not shared publicly. Until now. Ahem. The Town Inside Me's lyrics are kind of all over the place, bouncing back and forth between statements, but through reading the lyrics, you can see that it's her train of thought, as she tries to understand how she's feeling. The interjections
Taste like vegetables I don't like. I hate the alarm clock I chose.
come almost immediately after her saying,
I never found out what it was
almost as if she's trying to avoid her true issues with shallow issues. The note that
I'm not waiting for Santa Claus. I already have the gift, just can't open the box.
being her admitting that she knows deep down what's bothering her, but that the only thing stopping herself is herself. The town inside her, as she says, is the life she denies herself, refusing to accept who she truly is, a place she can't go to. Because she's afraid that if she tries to face her feelings, she may regret her decision, that she won't be able to put the genie back in the bottle. The final verse shows her finally giving up on bottling her emotions, that it's time to finally accept what she wishes, saying that it's time to
Take the gray haze into sky blue. I know who you are. I'm not leaving you again.
The final chorus is Bridget fully accepting her true self, as the instrumental swells triumphantly, the former lyrics of her distancing herself from the truth replaced with the declaration that as she repeats the final vow that she won't change for anyone but herself, she finally sees her happiness, declaring, I wrote this to explain to a friend what the song meant, because he said it didn't make much sense to him. I was a big fan of this song. Who knows why, right? Bridget makes her choice. She won't deny her happiness for the sake of others. She'll accept herself, her true self, no matter what anybody thinks. Or, as she simply declares,
I don't want to run scared anymore. If I keep on faking it like this, I know I'll regret it. So from now on, no matter what, no more lying to myself. Thank you, both of you.
Don't mention it. Happy trails, cowgirl, or, cowboy.
Cowgirl is fine, because I'm a girl.
Yeah, enough said. Even Bridget, a character that existed for a very specific gag, finds her happiness in this game. That is what Strive is about. But you're probably wondering, those first two, they don't sound particularly happy yet. And the fifth, that I haven't even mentioned yet, what happens with them? Well, we're about to get there. Just, hold on a second, alright? Chill out, relax. We're almost there. Like and subscribe. Sol and Jacko work as bounty hunters, but Sol is soon tasked with heading to the White House to stop the plans of Eno, who along with a mysterious figure named Happy Chaos, seem to be planning something severe involving Asuka. Sol understands that this is his last true shot at the Gear Maker, at the man that destroyed his life. Though, he feels he has no need for revenge any longer. Of course, the desire to avenge the wrongdoings done to him remains, but Sol is not the same man he was when he swore revenge. He has a family. He has Jacko, who despite not yet unlocking Arya within her mind, has grown closer to Sol, beyond her base instinct to love Frederick. And now, he finds himself caring for her as well, despite her technically not being the woman he engaged. Axel, meanwhile, is struggling to accept his place in the future. He knows he cannot return to his home without trading places with another, and not wanting to put some unfortunate soul in his place, he ponders, even for a moment, trading places with Megami, just so he can see her one final time. He comes into contact yet again with Eno, and seeing him once again causes her to recall a piece of her past. You see, Eno is much like Axel, a woman out of time, someone who found herself in a bizarre cosmic glitch. Well, there is more to her, but I promise you it is not needed for this video. But if you want to know so bad, pause and read the screen, it's right there. She explains in an interrogation room the small amount of her past she can recall.
There was a man in the slums named Will, the son of some rich guy and his wife. I can't even remember his face, but I recall he had beautiful blonde hair, like a woman's. He was a weird one. He'd always get into fights, but he'd cry after he hit someone. Told me that after he'd lost the strength to throw a punch, he couldn't get anything out but tears. I'd like to say we were happy. Until one day, Will suddenly disappeared. Didn't say a word to anyone, and he never came back. No cop or journalist could ever tell me why. I didn't plan on giving up on him, but I made myself a promise anyway. No matter what happened, I would never forget my memories with Will.
After Soul seemingly defeats Happy Chaos and Eno, Asuka prepares to leave Earth entirely, planning to live his life in solitude on the moon as penance for his crimes against Earth, as well as to protect the full knowledge of the universe, cause it would be bad if a bad guy got their hands on that. Though, before leaving, he asks Soul one thing. He gives Soul two options: to let Asuka atone for his mistake, or to kill Asuka as revenge. In this moment, Soul has the chance to do what he's wanted to all this time. To kill Asuka, to avenge himself, to avenge Arya. But what would it do? It wouldn't change anything, it wouldn't fix anything. Revenge does not change the past, but moving on will change his future. Soul makes the decision to abandon his revenge. Asuka removes the flame of corruption from Soul's body, weakening him, but now freeing him from the flame, which was actually a possibly catastrophic power and one half of the events that led to the many mass extinction events on Earth. In that moment, Soul Bad Guy is a man without purpose. With no vengeance to carry out, why has he made it this far? Well, all he'd need to do to answer that is to look around, at his new love, Jago, at his family in the Kisks. He lived for 100+ years to get to this point, for the chance to move on, to live his life in peace. However, just as Soul and Asuka make peace, Eno and Happy Chaos attack again, fusing that aforementioned universal knowledge with Eno, granting her godlike ability. With Soul weakened, there may be no stopping her in time. There truly is no hope.
Now I feel silly for getting so anxious. That does indeed sound like the work of a god. However, do you truly know yourself well enough to look for weaknesses of all mankind?
The only things that could stop me now are the flame of corruption or the scales of Juno. And they're long gone. What?
Not quite.
Except,
slight though it may be,
for Kai Kisk.
It's right here. Dragon install.
Kai rises in the ranks of the Holy Order, becoming as legendary of a hero during the Crusades as Cliff, inching closer and closer to his final fight with Justice, until he finds her defeated, covered in the telltale burn marks of the man he once fought alongside. After the Holy Order dissolves following the Crusades, Kai finds himself in a listless state, joining Interpol to continue serving the notion of justice. Upon hearing of a tournament meant to find the next Knights of the Holy Order to stop the soon-to-reawaken Justice, Kai enters. Not long after, he reunites with Soul, and the two realize the trap they find themselves in. Before the final battle with Soul in Justice begins, Justice asks Kai a question.
Why do you despise me so?
Isn't it obvious?
You are the root of evil that threatens peace.
So you would call me evil when you yourself are human? Was it not you humans who desired me to become this?
What?
I am merely fulfilling the fate given to me. I was made to kill humans. For me, that is the correct moral action given to me as a gear. It's justice. And yet you still call me evil.
Kai struggles to understand what justice means, but upon meeting Dizzy, Justice's child, a gear that wishes to avoid all violence, Kai begins to understand. The gears were made for destruction, but meant for so much more. In fact, we learn that the gears were once meant to be used for the sake of bettering humanity, to supply assistance, medical support. It was those in power that sought the other strengths of the gears: immortal, powerful, easily controlled. To humanity, the gears were more useful to slay enemies than to help mankind. Over time, they form a bond, Dizzy moving in with Kai, the pair soon falling in love. Though always in the back of Kai's head, the fear lingered. Dizzy was a gear, and the gears were the enemy of mankind. If the world found out about her, not long after, Dizzy would become pregnant. With this, Kai began to fear even more. How could he raise a gear child in a world like this? To place the final nail in the coffin, the Conclave, the shadow government of the world, would ask Kai to become king of the newly formed kingdom of Illyria. He had no wish to until they mentioned they were well aware of Dizzy. In that moment, Kai fell apart. He loved his wife, he loved his son, yet he knew that they could never be free. They could never live happily. Not knowing what to do, Kai prayed, staying in the church for days, begging for an answer. Dizzy sends Soul to help Kai, and the two fight, finally snapping Kai out of his misery. He asks Soul to take Sin in, to raise him the way he deserves, not in captivity, but out in the world. Kai's arc is defined by his want to mold the world in his image, to push past the tragedies of the past and give Gears a second chance. He uses his role as king as a shield to protect him from the Conclave, acting out by making choices that paint him as nothing more than a reckless child. But in truth, he acts with a purpose, that one day he will use his goodwill with humanity to push the freedom of Gears. And with the Conclave knocked out of power near the end of Exerd, Kai has his chance. At the center of that goal is his family. Kai was a young man who grew up in war, wanting nothing more than to shed the blood of the monsters who took everything from him. But now he stands as a man beyond that angry violence. He's grown past it, all because of his wife and son, and he is devoted to ensuring their safety above all. By Strive, Kai is prepared to make his marriage public at the G4 Summit, the same event where the maker of the Gears will speak. And here we find ourselves again. With Ino holding godlike powers and Soul out of the fight, there is nobody who can stop her. Until Kai reveals a secret long held. At some point, through close contact with Dizzy, Kai inherited some of her gear cells. While not making him as powerful as her, they do grant him some abilities. In particular, the abilities of the Scales of Juno. Weakening Ino enough to allow Soul to get the final hit in, Ino begins to fade away, but not before Axel returns, begging her not to go.
You made me so happy! Please, remember something! Anything!
Why are you crying?
And with his answer, she realizes.
I can't get anything out but tears!
Beautiful blonde hair, like a woman's.
In another world, Ino was Megami, who had lost Will, her Axel. Unlike Axel, who moved past the loss of his love, Ino lost herself, using her powers to cause chaos throughout time. She refused to look forward and embraced apathy. And yet, here was Axel, a man with the same power as her, who uses them for the good of the people he cares about, at his own expense, always looking forward. She sees her will in him, and realizes that he probably sees his Megami in her, and then she disappears. Sometime later, Axel sits alone on a bench, pondering all he went through, the loss of someone he cared for. And then, he hears a voice.
I'm giving you my unfair way of life. You asked for this. I don't get it, but that's what she told me to say. Are you really Axel?
Ino's final act in her life of selfishness was an act of pure selflessness, finally giving Axel the one thing he truly wanted in life. Kai abdicates from the throne of Illyria, announcing his marriage to Dizzy, the existence of their son, and forming the new kingdom of Violadia, a kingdom for gears. Sol retires with Jacko, the pair giving up the lives of bounty hunting, with Sol taking on the life of a mechanic. Bridget continues to work as a bounty hunter, now living as herself, and Testament, once believing they'd never live among humanity again, continues to live a peaceful life as well.
These days, I'm really into stacking rocks by the river.
Stacking rocks?
Right. I stack them one by one, minding height, shape, and wind direction. And what do you think happens?
What? Like an internal dialogue or something?
No, people call the cops. I suppose I look suspicious.
Strive feels like the end of an era. After 8 mainline games, the main cast find themselves at a point of rest. The evils have been defeated, the heroes hung up their swords, and the world is now good. At the beginning of each match in Strive, the announcer declares, "Mankind knew they cannot change society, so instead of reflecting on themselves, they blamed the beasts." While kind of vague, I think it embodies the overarching theme of Guilty Gear, the theme of moving forward. Sol and Kai are men defined by the wars they fought, and only when they chose to finally leave those battlefields did they find peace. Axel accepts he can't go back home, and even if Megami never found her way back to him, he was still ready to live a life without her, because he knew that's what she'd want him to do. This declaration is about humanity's fear of the Gears, their refusal to move past the awful actions that the Gears were forced to do by justice. However, in Strive, we see the world begin to move on. In the side story for Strive, Sin, Ramlethal Valentine, and a group of Gears save a village from destruction in the midst of a battle. The world is slowly healing, and that line, the one that prefaces each battle, has a second half.
Mankind knew that they cannot change society, so instead of reflecting on themselves, they blamed the beasts. But they found beauty in the lives of beasts, and couldn't lie to themselves about it.
Guilty Gear is a story of moving on, of living life after tragedy. It's the story of broken people, of misfits and outcasts and rejects finding their place and moving forward with a smile. It's a series of rock and roll, aura farming and hype moments, awesome music, sick character designs, and above all else, it is a story about humanity. And I think that's pretty heavy.
Can't you see I'm blazing? Still my heart is blazing. If the words kill me, I don't need a new world order. You, my time is my word. Your words will never let me disappear. That is bullshit blazing. Still my heart is blazing. If the words kill me, I don't need a new world order. Soon you will know. We already know the smell of the, know the smell of the, know the smell of the, know the smell of